Hello, hello. Welcome to our second unit of the second part of our drawing basics. Today we want to deal with the final drawing of the sketch from the last unit, the proportions of the entire body. Okay, I want to define the aims that we want to reach in this unit. Here it comes. The aims. The aims. Okay, the first one is the same as before. Learning the proportions of the human body means, okay, beside we talk about again as a kind of repetition. Next part is improving the drawing skills. I think it's clear when we deal with the drawing, we train it. Then I want to put in a little bit about the lighting, means especially for us as drawers and painters, we set the shadow, and here we want to define the source of light comparable to our unit with the head. And then we set the shadows. And important is too that we create with our final drawing the next step for our work in the order of combining the worlds. Means then I want to use this as a prompt for an AI. And then I want to combine Illustrator and InDesign too. Okay, let us start. I hide the beginning part here and come to my sketch from before. Here it is, male body in a T-pose. Yes, important is that we combine the entire time this with some remarks about Photoshop work. So you can learn this too if you want. And if this is necessary for you. Okay, here's the work layer or layer group with 3 layers inside. That means the guides, the remarks, and here's combined with the guides. And here's the sketch on. Okay, and we want to use this sketch now for our work. I reduce the opacity of the layers a little bit. For this, I unlock the layer guides, reduce to possibly 40. This is only one line here in the center, no wondering about. Then I lock again, do the same here, and reduce again. 40. These are the most of lines and remarks. And here comes the sketch. I reduce only to 40 again. And then I go back to the remarks and make it to 30, I think. Yes, one remark too. If you want, you can use this dragging possibility here if you like more. I do this normally with the numbers. Okay, I lock the layers. And then I create a new layer by pressing Ctrl-Shift-N. Or you can use this button with the square and the plus here in the layer window. Okay. For me, this is an advantage because I can rename the layer, in this case to drawing. And I can mark the layer. I use violet and press OK. The rest I can lock too if you want to avoid that you draw accidentally on another layer. So we have only one layer in which you can work now. Okay, then I define my drawing color here. This is the foreground color here in blue. When you want to change fore and background, you can press this kind of curvy double-headed arrow or the X key. Then I press one time into the foreground color, and I said this often before. In my past, I worked as a printer, and that's why I use often the CMYK colors. Not really suitable for this RGB, but it helps to calibrate in a way or bring in a suitable appearance, the color in the printing and the color on the screen. If you know what does it mean here with this numbers in CMYK. I use my favorite brown because of often this kind of warm appearance, except the blue pen. I have a kind of yellow in the background, and my drawing is in a dark brown. You can test what you like. Okay. I suggest here 60, 80, 140. This is the brown that I want. If you want to use the same, I repeat 60, 80, 140. I press OK, and then you can see it here. Then we come to the brush. If you press the B key, you come to the brush tool, in my case here, a giantly one. For the explanation for changing the short keys, you can use my simple and fast, kind of tutorial, only 2 minutes and a bit, but unfortunately now only in German. Later I do possibly an English version. Okay, here I choose as a standard at first the hard and round. If you want to make it softer, you can drag here. Okay, then I go out of, make sure that the, sensible or the adjustment by pressure of the pen is activated. That means opacity again. That means size. It's a repetition, I know, but I think you don't watch each video. That's why I do. Okay. Then I zoom in. One remark to the zoom. If you have a scrubby zoom activated, you have this process here for zooming. By the way, I pressed before the Z key to reach the zoom tool, sorry. My idea is, or my favorite version is, and that's why I want to suggest the old version with deactivated scrubby zoom. You can, target your aim. That means you make the selection and then you reach what you want. For me, it's much more comfortably than the scrubby one. Okay. I press the B key again, make sure that I have not so much pressure here, means opacity in this case. I go down to 30. Often I work in this area from 10 to 30. I repeat the advantage here by using only the numbers on the key. When you press the 7, you have 70 automatically, the 9, 90, and 3, 30, and so on. Okay. I reduce my brush tip, zoom really near into in the German video, in the German version with the female proportion. I do this really detailed, but it makes not really sense because you can see how big the pixels are in this resolutions. Okay. I follow the shape of the entire head here. By the way, if you want to correct something, possibly you think the head is too small, only a little bit, or too big, or too edgy, or too round, you can change it now by using in the real world, the pencil, and here our dark color. And I see, okay, the size is possibly okay, but it's really exaggerated edgy. And I want to do this a little bit more round. Means, by the way, you can change to the eraser tool by pressing the E key, and here you have it. And here, I want to do this a little bit more rounder, but step by step. And my idea is to have this stereotypically kind of male appearance. In the character design, we use often the idea of edgy shapes for. Yes. Okay. I follow the eyes. For the details of the face, I want to make the remark again for the videos that deals with the head and face proportions and the shape of the face, shapes of the details of the face too. Okay. But you can suggest that we have a really small appearance here and it makes no sense. And sometimes it's not really possible because of the pixels that we create a really perfect detailed face. You can see especially on the nose tip. Okay, I bring a little bit down the nose with the nose wings. I draw only one of the parts of the nose back here only a little bit on this side. And then I come to the mouth. Same stereotypically idea of male with a smaller mouse, but smaller in the meaning of not so much volume. But this is, in the reality, it's more a joke, but sometimes it helps to define that it has to be a male here. Okay. I exaggerate this cheek, bones here, this cheekbones. And then the ear is important, by the way, proportions has to be located in between the lines of the eyebrows and the level of the not chin, nose. Yes, I repeat, nose and eyebrows define the size, the height of the ears. Okay. Then as a repetition, we can divide the face and forehead part with horizontal hands. 1, 2, 3, and except me, here starts the hair. And here you can compare a little bit. And when you at the beginning of the hair, you can create a curve here. That means here in this part, and then a next part on the forehead. Here a little bit edgy, exaggerated, but so you can see. I can't presentate, that's why I do here. Okay, then I do this perfectly hairdressing here. Yes, a little bit of joke. It's possibly too straight and too clean, to whatever. Okay. Okay, I do here. And the next short hair over the ear here in this area. And then I finish this here. Yes, later with the shadow and the details, we do it more. Yeah, I hope suitable. But what I can do here now, when we follow the shape of the parts here of the hair, you can see this again. I repeat in this video with the head and hair. Uh, you make a kind of hatching that helps a little bit to define the idea of light and shadow and the details. But here it's really small, you can see. Okay, here backwards, important is that the smaller part of the line is in the light area. I repeat here, in this direction and in this direction. Okay. In the real world, often we turn the paper, and I did in this tutorial with the head too. But here it makes no sense. It's too small. I think it's not so necessary. Whoop. Yeah, later possibly we duplicate the stroke here, the final drawing layer, so that we get a little bit a darker appearance of all together. Okay, I zoom out to get an overview, and then I come in again and come to the neck. Here, increase a little bit my brush tip. It's not necessary to stay on the small one. Here are not so much details that I have to follow. Here comes the trapezius musculature, and I bring a bulk into. Possibly he had some works out in between the sketching and now. Okay, then I come to the collarbone. Here comes a dent, and I do it in this way. Often it's too kind of clean or mechanical. If this is too much, I reduce later, possibly with an eraser tool. but I try to consider now too. By the way, this part here, I erase it, pressing the E key, increase the brush tip size for the eraser. If we want to create soft transitions in our refining, I take another part here. And normally we, divide fore and background or parts against each other. Here in this case, the head again, when you watch at me. In this real world, it's defined by light, shadow, color, so that we can divide my head here from this background. Um, in our drawing process, we do this as a simplification abstract. Lines helps us to define what is ahead and what is behind. When we do this with the painting, we do this more, or we do this exactly as in a reality, light, shadow, and color, if there is color. But when we need smoother transitions, possibly when we create this nose part here, shadows of the eyes, mouth, and this is too much when we draw a sharp line. Here I try to solve with a little bit interrupted line only on one part and so on. You can use a smoother line in a digital way. You can say, okay, I go back to 10% opacity, increase possibly the brush tip, and then I do this here. It's a little bit like painting. When we do this on paper, possibly, and we have a hard pencil, we do head checks, possibly like this here. Boy, it's not visible. I have to do this more exaggerated. It's parallel hatching. We do double lines, or more than double. And we cross it a little bit so that we have a smooth transition in between. And here for the subdivision of the breast musculature, we can do two. I go back to 10, increase the brush tip size, and do it more in this way. But it's a transition to the painting too, we have to consider. Okay. Now I follow my deltoideus here, this musculature over the bones of the joint of the shoulders. Okay, long explanation. I hope it's understandable. Come back to 30%. And here comes the musculature of the shoulders. I check. Yes, it works. We have to consider the width here of defined by 3 heads beside each other without ears. And then we come to the biceps, the musculature to bend the arm. That's why here it's not so giantly visible. It's stretched. Important for the stretching is the other one, the opposite, the antagonist of this biceps is this triceps here. We can define it when we draw skinny and athletic people with an edge here, really. That's why I do this arrow here to point out, to focus on this part here. Okay, we come back to the biceps later. I do the forearm. Yes, consider not each people have so much forearm musculature, but we can follow the idea of the, this. Here I have already, but I do again. Here's the bulk or curve in this direction, and here it goes inside. Often we can use, so repetition too, we can use this opposite curves for creating, in a way, natural shapes, especially here of the human body. And if you do this more as a kind of graphic design, possibly in Illustrator or Inkscape or whatever, you can create your vector-based line strokes on this principle, and then it looks really, really cute. Not really cute, cool and accurate. If you draw a cute person or animal, then it's cute, but this was my mistake. Okay, here we come to the thumb. And by following the explanation of the curves, we have this here opposite, or we have this not really opposite. We have the curves in the same direction. You can see here. Okay, hand subdivided nearly in the half. Then the entire shape, a little bit erasing here. And then the beginning here of the hand in the transition of, yeah, or to the forearm. Then here comes the subdivisions for the fingers. We have to consider this has to be the longest one. This here. The pointer is a little bit shorter. It's difficult for the individuals what is now the next. Sometimes the pointer, sometimes this ring finger. And then we come to the smallest one. Here it's important that we have a really clear, visible, shorter distance to bridge. Okay. I said I come back to the biceps. At first, I want to define the transition from the deltoideus. In our sketch, it was an ellipse. Goes directly to our pectoralis major. This is the breast musculature. Often we have here a little bit of bulk into, then we come directly to this shape. And together with this latissimus dorsi, the big musculature here of the back that we use, in sports, for chin-ups, sometimes pull-ups, for whatever, so that we bring the arm or the elbows behind or in this way. Okay, these dragging movements. Okay, biceps we do with a softer line. I increase the size, decrease the pressure or the opacity, and then I do this here. So, yeah, with some strokes. And we can do for the joint too. It's not so, mechanical, technical. Okay, let us do again. Kind of reflection. Yes, we can do this with a reflection option, but I want to do this manually. Manually. Yes, it's a kind of mantra. I say this all the time. Sometimes it helps to learn. If we want to do this more for production and so effective, that it's possible, we can use for all steps AI, and then it makes no sense to explain something. Okay. This is the deltoideus. We go down to the biceps, to the elbow joint. Then we consider, by comparison, the width of the entire arm. And here comes the edge again for the triceps, the antagonist of the biceps. Then we come up here to the joint. This is often a little bit difficult. I struggle all the time. Where's the most, widest part here? Here we try to follow a little bit the idea of the opposite curves. And then we come down to the joint of the hand here, small part. Often I switch back here to the eraser to make it more smooth. And then we check the symmetry. This is a little bit hard when we are so much zoomed in. But I try my best. Here are the similar curves for the thumb joint as a bulk. Then I come forward with a smaller width here of the entire finger part. Then I divide it nearly into two parts and a half. Here's the beginning of the forearm. I divide it again here for the fingers 3 times. Make sure that this is the longest, then the pointer and the ring finger, and then the smallest finger. Then I have to erase. As always, I would say, or often. Yes, and I have to make sure that it works here, that I correct and compare. Yeah, the fingers looks a little bit short here. Possibly later I correct a little bit, but it works. I go to this X part here again. Curve, bulk. Yes, symmetry. Hold the symmetry. Then down to the breast musculature here, the latissimus dorsi again, to the waist part. Then here I use a smoother transition again with less opacity and more width of the stroke weight. So it's not so technical. Looks again like an armor. Okay. Here the same for the abs. I stay on this soft white brush here, interrupted sometimes. So it works a little bit less technically, but it's again a little bit. In the real world, it's often not so symmetrically and yes, not so perfectly trained, not so skinny, but sometimes when we talk about kind of fitness models or whatever. Okay, here I create the ribs or depends what we want. Looks the same by drawing, I would say. The musculature in between the ribs or the ribs in itself. Okay, then we come to the pelvis bone, but here I changed it back to 30% opacity and reduce a little bit the stroke weight and here a little bit deeper than in the female version, the beginning of the not waist, the pelvis bone. Here it comes. Often the musculature is on this covered this directly, and then we have one sharp defined shape when we have so skinny persons. I try to mix a little bit both. Yes, here we can do this. Whoa. Then I go in a little bit and come out to our trochanter major. I repeat or explain again. This is a really, really rough simplification of the pelvis bone. And then there comes the bone of our leg into with this angle. And here we have often this bulk, and this is normally defined at the center of our body. But you can imagine that when we come from here to here, it's possible that we can create a soft dent here in between. It's not really perfectly common, but it's possible if you want to find a shape. Often it's covered of the musculature here. That means if we trained really this quadriceps by going by bicycle or whatever, um, we have different positions of the maximum width of this leg part. Here I do this in this way. So I'm on the trochanter major and then I reduce a little bit. Not really. You can see here it's possibly more because of this musculature. And then I go a little bit down, but if you imagine we do this squat training the entire time or whatever, we have here a giantly bulk over the knees. Okay. Yes, we can create here a subdivision. I'm not really sure if this is really for every person visible. No, it's not visible. Then inside, that deals a little bit with the idea of the quadriceps. Later, erase a little bit so that it's not so exaggerated. Okay, the bulks of the quadriceps over the knee, the subdivision, and the third part that it's visible here in front. Then we come up. By the way, what we do here all the time is drawing and painting without reference. That means the idea is to train this without reference by construction. That's why possibly it takes a little bit longer, but I think for you as professional illustrators, possibly this is your wish that you want to be. Um, yeah, it's a little bit like yeah, avoiding tracing. So you do this with your own ideas, with your own construction, the information that you have in your brain. Okay. Yes, but it's necessary to use references to train your skills. But here I don't use, and you can use me as a reference. Okay, knee shape, a little bit more, yeah, soft and is it the right word? Bulky? I don't know. Two bulks over each other. I point out again this oblique shape here inside the knee. If you do this in front of the mirror, you can see it goes a little bit in this direction. Here it seems straight. Okay. Then we come to the maximum width of the calf and shin. Inside deeper, outside higher, outside flatter, inside more curvy. Okay, subdivision, sharp edge of the shin here is inside, not outside. Here's a smooth transition of the shin musculature. Knuckle is inside a little bit higher. It's often hard to define when you stand in front of the mirror, but it has to be. Okay, in the past I explained, or in the last video I explained that we want to do this as a preparation for the animation or 3D modeling for animation and game art. That's why I put all these parts. It's a kind of technical drawing in the image. Seems flat. Everything is parallel, not with a real, yeah, reducing of measures in the background. That's why we have this same level here for the foot directly on the line. I yeah break a little bit this rule by doing some millimeters over, but try to hold the parallel line here, the flat line. That's why I bring it a little bit up to correct. But you can see it's really hard to hold and looks a little bit, I would say, kind of weird. Later with the shadow, it works a little bit, but now, whoa, looks like an animal, but too short and too thick. Okay. Do again on the other side, parallel or symmetrically. Here I have to consider that there's this oblique line or orientation inside the leg. Make sure that when you bring the foot or the feet outside, you bring the knees outside too. Otherwise, we destroy with this torsion this leg. But here, I think this is a better resolution. Possibly I reduce, I correct this and copy this. Okay, I check. I do this here and check if this is really better. Correction is allowed. Yes. Okay, you can see it's much more outside, but it looks more realistic. Okay, the biggest toe inside, then the other ones smaller on one level nearly here in this special version. Okay, I think I erased this part here by using the E key again. And then I come back to the brush tool, B key. Then I do this more edgy, like here, more outside and a little bit bigger. And it helps me to find a better shape here. You can see. Yes, it's a little bit, yeah, edgy and technical, but I think a little bit better. Okay, I have to correct something here. The butt part is here not really visible on this side, and that's why I go over this and bring the step part a little bit higher. Otherwise, the figure seems possibly a little bit too short, has too short legs. I think this is better. And check again. Here we can reduce a little bit the pelvis bones or the musculature on to make this leg appearance a little bit longer. That means we change a little bit the angle here. Means we start later, do it not so high, and let it end here possibly. So, and then we can go down from this position. And so you can see we can change the appearance by holding the proportions with these, yeah, possibilities. And all the time you can correct what you did before in your blue pen proportion drawing, sketching. Okay. Belly button. Then we check it. Yes. It looks much better. And I think we can increase a little bit the leg weight. And I do here in the technical version a little bit. Or not. I erase and do it with a line. I think it works. Okay, eraser. I do it here. Go softly over and take my brush and bring some more weight here outside only a little bit, not so exaggerated. Yes. The other part looks already in this way. Okay, check the entire body. Yes, okay. Then we come to the light and shadow and a little bit of correction. Sometimes here again, I turn a little bit the inside. Yes, I think now it works nearly. Okay. Here I add the forgotten biceps line. Then I want to bring on the shadow at first with the blue pen. The idea is to show you some possibilities how you can change the color for, and you test what feels better, what looks better. By the way, we can do stuff like this here when we draw. We can bring in the appearance or the illusion of a little bit shadow, possibly here under the shin part, the dark part. Here a little bit less because the source of light is in the next moment from left above. Here we can do too. We can create bigger lines or some, yeah, a little bit the illusion of a small, not really illusion, the idea of a small shape or area with a little bit shadow inside. That based a little bit on the idea of the inking process of the American comics. Okay. Let us define on a new layer. I press Control Shift N, our source of light. This has to be, in my case, here above. I increase my brush tip opacity to 90 by pressing the 9. Then I change font background by pressing the X key. And then I create this small funny sun. By the way, if you want to do this perfectly comfortably, you can do at first 4 lines in the rectangle idea, and then you fill in between smaller lines. Often it looks cool. Okay, then I defined a three-dimensional arrow, a little bit exaggerated, that based on the idea of this traditional background painting, so that of the animation, so that we have in every scene a suitable, yeah, situation of light. Okay. Often it's really clear to define or say this is left. Okay, left in, yeah, in comparison or in the situation to in relation to this male protagonist here. That means okay, left is clear. Okay, I increase the brush tip. Left. And then I think it's clear that it is above. But often students have a problem with the idea of this is in front in relation to the object. I do this here with a marker and my skinhead here. Um, so I use my marker here as an arrow too. And in the direction, we have this three-dimensional arrow there. That means the light comes here. You can watch on the marker and goes in this direction to my forehead. And this is the same direction. And that means this is in front of, not perfectly in front, but soft. Okay. In front. And so we know it's a little, possibly it's, I hope it's not so stupid for you, but it helps to do this in a straight target orientated way, oriented way. Left, above, and front. That means right is a shadow, below is a shadow, and behind is a shadow. Okay, let us check the entire appearance. Before we go on, I rename this layer to shadow. Double click on the word, on the name. Then I go to my drawing layer and duplicate this layer by testing, or because I want to test, what looks better, more, stronger stroke or not. I press for the duplication only Control J. I repeat Control J. And then we have this. And I would say it looks much cooler, but possibly not so much. I go to 80. Yes, I think it's okay. Enter key, and then I press, in this case, I want Control E for merge down the layers. I lock the layer, the drawing layer, bring the shadow under because we don't want to overpaint this stroke. And then I zoom in to my face and I check that I have the blue. Then I switch to my brush tip, go into the control bar here above and change to the soft brush. It's not, yeah, I would say it's not in each case perfectly. Often it's too soft, but here it's really small. And possibly if this is not the best appearance, we can go again over with a harder one. But for the first beginning, I think it works. Okay, I go at first to 20 for the opacity, increase my brush tip. In my case, it's a German Ü. You can use what you want, or you do this possibly here, size drawing. Okay. The light comes from above, left in front, so possibly the hair has a shadow projection on the forehead. Then here on the right, we have a shadow. The right ear is hidden in shadows. Then the nose create a shadow. And I have to decrease a little bit my opacity for the next step. So we have a smoother transition. Under the eyebrow, in this eye hole, we have a shadow here, especially when we have this deep into the skull eyes. Okay, here I create a smooth transition on the forehead. My idea is that it comes in this way from left above, that we have a shadow on the left too, but not so much, only to following the hard, edgy structure here. Okay. You can see it works in some seconds so that we have a more three-dimensional illusion and we can solve some, yeah, not so realistic appearances or problems. I think I like it. Yes. On the real paper, it makes fun too with a simple blue pen. Okay, here for the hair, I increased to 80 the opacity so that we have the possibility to see something. I reduced to 60, was too much. And then I bring into the kind of, yeah, reflection. Most of shadow is here on the right part. Then I reduce to 30, make it smoother. And then I take the eraser to bring back a little bit light here. Here too. Okay, then I go on. Blue 30 at first, then 20, bigger, under the shin part, and oh, I'm on the eraser again. This is what have to happen often. Okay, again, 20, brush tool, and shadow under the shin, here beside, on the right, and here we can deal especially with this musculature of the neck here, and with this Adam's apple here. Here under the shin again, we make a bigger projection. You can see it's really dark now. Possibly we can balance later again, but we check the entire appearance. Okay, not so dark here in this part. Boom, boom. Here it's hard to, when it comes from here, possibly here we have a little bit, but the most of them has to be here, the shadow part. Here again, hard to decide. It comes from above. That means, okay, we have to, yeah, sculpt out the deltoideus in this way, but make sure that you don't come too much into this dark blue. The dent is not so giantly. Here we come to the shape of the biceps again, into the depth of the joint part, then this forearm part, and the hand. And now with this shadow, I think the hand works. Go back to the other part, but before I zoom out so that you have a entire view in front of you. In between, then I come back, drag my layer window beside, and create the shadows on the right too. Here you can see there's a projection of the head on. Possibly we can do this a little bit here on the deltoideus, the shoulder musculature, but in the next step. Here's the same. We can imagine that there is more shadow on this hand than on the left hand. Yeah, then we check the entire view. Okay, then we zoom in the breast part again. here the shadow on the delta, no, not the deltoideus, the latissimus dorsi. And here we come to the pectoralis major. And here we can do what I said before, bring a little bit shadow based on the idea that the head projection is a little bit there. And then we do the sculpting part. Yes, I like this comparison to the sculpting process. We do the step by step, have a rough entire mass of the body, and then we go step by step more into the details. So we can check for each step, is the best what this if this is the best what we do. Yeah, sorry for my scattering English. I hope I improve step by step too. Okay. Then we come to this these apps. The part of the problem is all the time the technical appearance. Okay, the light comes from here. That means the shadow is on the right. When we compare it here, it's the same, but it, it seems so that it's opposite because here there is a shadow and not here. Okay. And when we do this really detailed, we can accelerate it so much, but I said 1,000 times, yeah, it looks really too technically. Yes. Okay. Another pectoralis. And here we have the chance to bring more shadow on here on this right part, following the pelvis bone or and the musculature on, go down to the step part here. Okay. Here, opposite, shadow is here. And the light is here when we imagine the musculature comes like a bulk out of the belly area here. Okay. Inside, really dark. Here a little bit. Increase a little bit the brush opacity. Decrease again. Yes, I'm not so sure what is the best. That's why I reduce often and do this 2,000 times. Okay, the knee part, another quadriceps. Same idea, light comes from here, shadow is right below. I would say we cover nearly the entire calf part with the shadow. Here it's necessary that we do it a little bit darker. It helps to build the shape. Yes, here is not a possibility to bring so much shadow on because this is directly in the direction of light. Here it's possibly a little bit to do, but I have to erase a little bit outside. Do too much. Yes, I check. I go to the right part, increase the brush tip, following the muscles. Do the same here. Shadow here, right, more than on this part, on the left. Right side, giantly shadow again. Go down to the foot. Unfortunately, here is not so, yeah, a little bit it's possible. I would say possibly we have the chance to say that there's a projection on of the other leg, but not really, isn't it? Yeah, but I think it works. Okay. Then I check the entire body. Then I hide the sketch part behind. So it looks much cleaner. Then we can check if there is a correction necessary here, possibly on the outline part. We can erase a little bit and make something smoother so it's not so exaggerated. I lock the shadow layer here by pressing the black lock. Unlock the drawing layer. By the way, it's possible here and here directly in the layer, not the locking, but the unlocking. Okay. But consider in the older version, it's not possible to do a step here, this unlocking step, but means really in this Creative Suite version some years ago. Okay, I want to clean a little bit this here. On the other hand, too. Then I want to, yes, relatives. Okay, I increase the era eraser, not erasure, band of the 80s. Okay. Um, Here I want to make it a little bit smoother. I think it's a little bit too much. That means I increase the brush, reduce it to possibly 10 or 20 or 30, whatever. I check it first how it works so that I don't erase it perfectly. I make it only, yes, softer, not so hard visible. Same here. Yeah, I correct a little bit the line. I want to avoid again this technical appearance. Okay, this is what we can do here a little bit, but I do it already. But we can do it a little bit. Yes, this is comparable with the smudging and this pencil drawing process with paper, on paper. Okay, I unlock this layer, press Ctrl S for saving, and check if there's a nice result if we duplicate the blue. I think here is too much, here's not so giantly. I try to find a position in between, reduce to 60. Yes. And then I do it really digitally. I separate it a little bit. You can see here I use more pressure. It's really dark. And below, it's no, not so much. Okay. By the way, here I can do more. This is what I do at first. Okay. I merge down at first this 60% layer. Then I correct what I want to correct here, a little bit more shadow on this part. Lupin, brush tip, and sometimes it doesn't work with the B key. Increasing doesn't work too. Okay. Possibly I saved before. Before we have a crash down here. Okay, here I want to do a little bit more shadow mass in a way. Check. Okay. And I only want to duplicate the shadow part under the breast musculature. For this, I use my lasso tool. If you press the L key, you reach the lasso tool, a general short key, and then you press longer and go to the polygon lasso, perhaps. Polygon lasso tool. And then I make a selection directly on the stroke here of the breast musculature. Then I go down and select the entire lower body. beginning from the breast musculature, zoom out by pressing Control 0. Then I want to do this a little bit smooth, but it's not really necessary. But I want. I go to Select, Menu Select, Modify, and here to Feather. I repeat, Menu Select, Modify, Feather. Here I go only to 2. That means we have a smooth transition from 100% opacity to 0 with 2 pixels. Okay, I press OK. And then I only duplicate the shadow part here below. That means I press Ctrl J, and you can see only the shadow part below is duplicated. You can see the result. Okay, I merge down by pressing Ctrl E. So you have a little bit of learning process, yes, for the Photoshop functions. Okay, then I save again, then I duplicate the entire one to colorize. Control J. That means for our shadows again. I hide the original shadow layer and call it shadow blue. The other one I rename into shadow brown. Here it comes. Then I lock the transparent layers. This is this chess pattern here. That means we can't fill, can't work, can't whatever on the transparent parts. But that means too that it's not divided into 100% transparent and 100% opacity. We have a smooth transition inside. When we fill into perfectly, we have the same exactly appearance with another color. This, you can solve this with adjustment layers too, but I want to offer you the possibility. Okay, we go in our toolbar to the brown in this way that we, sorry, I don't change. I use the brown as for my eyedropper tool. Yeah, I press it first into the blue. Then I go with the appearing eyedropper tool into my brown in the background color. And then I change the color for the shadow. That means it has to be brighter. I delete the black into 0. It has to be more brighter. That's why I go into 30, 50, and 70. This is what I want to fill in. If you want to use these numbers, I repeat 30, 50, and 70. And key is 0. Okay. And then I press the magical key for the foreground color, Alt and Backspace. You can see the result now, and I think it looks really cool. I repeat, Alt and Backspace, or when you are on the Mac, you use Option and Delete. You can use each delete key you have that works in combination with the Alt or Option key. Okay. That means filling in the defined area or the entire layer. Okay, this is what I want to accept as a result. I check the face. Okay, what? Yeah, possibly here with the ear is not so suitable. Yeah, it's a day of correction. I corrected here in my brown shadow copy, but for this I have to deactivate the transparent lock. I paint a little bit over. When I do a shadow here, I have to have a shadow on the ear too. Here it can be darker, but no fear, I don't do this the entire time, this correction, but yes, today is the day of correction. Okay, I go to Control 0 and press 2 times the F for the ending, Control 0 again, so that we have the biggest entire view that it's possible here in Photoshop. And yes, it's time to say thank you for watching, possibly working with me. I want to give you an outlook on the planned next steps. At first, I want to go back to the German version, do the same what I do a little bit later here. I want to create a version with the AI, means so that we can combine this as a kind of illustration for the half or the quarter of the body. I want to do some experiments before. Um, and then I want to go into the Illustrator, and then I want to go into InDesign to create a possibly a double page design with a background. In this way, I want to, yeah, do some tryouts before so that I, yeah, have a little bit more suspense. It's not perfectly detailed plan, but in this way it has to be. Okay, it's time to say thank you. Have a nice day. See you in the next video. Bye bye.